The massive transport ship dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light. Inside, 20 human cadets felt their stomachs lurch as the artificial gravity adjusted. Jack Murphy grabbed the metal handhold above his seat and took a deep breath. Through the small window beside him, he could see planet Nexus 7 growing larger, a swirling marble of purple and green. "This is it," said Lisa Rodriguez from the seat next to him. First humans at the Galactic Federation Academy. Her dark eyes were fixed on the planet below, but her hands gripped her harness so tight her knuckles had turned white. Jack nodded but said nothing. He was not much for words. 6 months ago, he had been guiding hikers through the Colorado wilderness. Now he was millions of light years from Earth, about to represent humanity at the most elite military training facility in the known universe. The ship's speakers crackled. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," said a flat computer voice. "Landing in 12 minutes. Kyle Bennett leaned forward from the row behind them. "I heard the dropout rate is 40%, he whispered. "And that's for species who've been part of the Federation for centuries." "We'll be fine," Jack said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Federation 8 months ago. They were the new kids, the primitives, the ones who had just figured out faster-than-light travel, while other species had been crossing the stars for thousands of years. The ship shuddered as it cut through the upper atmosphere. Jack closed his eyes and remembered the letter from Earth Command. "You have been selected based on exceptional physical and mental aptitude scores. Your performance will determine humanity's standing in interstellar military operations." No pressure. With a gentle bump, the transport touched down on the landing pad. The side door hissed open, letting in air that smelled like cinnamon and copper. Jack and the other cadets unbuckled and grabbed their small bags of personal items. Standard issue equipment would be waiting for them at the academy. They walked down the ramp in neat rows of 2, just as they had practiced. The landing area was massive, with ships of all shapes and sizes. Some looked like insects, others like glass sculptures. Jack tried not to stare. A line of Federation officers waited for them, a collection of species Jack had only seen in briefing videos. The one in the center stepped forward. 7 feet tall and covered in scales that shifted from green to blue, with 4 yellow eyes that blinked in different patterns. 2 assistants flanked him, one with tentacles instead of arms, the other seemingly made of living crystal. "I am Drill Sergeant Zithar," the reptilian alien said in perfect English. His voice was like gravel in a blender. "You are the first humans to step foot in this academy. I am not impressed." Jack stood at attention, keeping his face neutral. The scales around Zithar's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "Let me be clear," Zithar continued, walking slowly in front of the human line. "Your species is new, unproven, physically inferior to most cadets here. I predict a 100% failure rate for your group." Some of the human cadets shifted uncomfortably. Not Jack. He had heard worse from mountain rescue trainers. "Follow me to the orientation hall," Zithar said. "Try to keep up." As they marched across the massive courtyard, Jack noticed they were being watched. Alien cadets from dozens of species paused their activities to stare. Some pointed, others whispered. Jack caught snippets of translated conversation from his earpiece. "So soft-looking. No natural defenses. Primitive world. Why are they even here?" The orientation hall was a dome of shimmering material that adjusted to the light. Inside, holographic displays showed training scenarios that seemed impossible, cadets climbing walls in triple gravity, swooning through what looked like acid, running through fields of fire. Zithar turned to face them, his tail swishing across the floor. "Tomorrow you begin the gauntlet," he said. "The most challenging course in the academy. Most cadets require 30 hours to complete it. The record is 8 hours, held by a draconian warrior." He leaned forward, all 4 eyes fixed on the humans. "I will enjoy watching you fail," he said. Dismissed. As the other cadets filed out, Jack stayed behind, studying the hologram of the gauntlet. Something about it seemed familiar, like a puzzle he'd solved before. Scathar noticed him. "Questions, human?" Jack shook his head. "No, sir. Just getting ready." The alien made a sound like rocks tumbling down a hill. Jack realized it was laughter. "Getting ready for failure," Scathar said. "Save your energy. You'll need it to pack your bags when you quit." Jack said nothing. But inside, something was building. A quiet determination that had carried him through blizzards and flash floods back on Earth. He would show them what humans could do. That night in the barracks, Jack studied the digital map of the gauntlet on his datapad. The human cadets had been given a small section of the massive building to themselves. Their bunks were adjusted to Earth gravity and atmosphere, a small comfort in this strange place. "You're still looking at that thing?" Kyle asked, sitting down next to Jack. His blonde hair was still wet from the sonic shower, which had left everyone's skin tingling in an odd way. "Just trying to understand the layout," Jack replied, zooming in on a section that showed an underwater maze. Lisa joined them, her footsteps almost silent. Before being selected for the academy, she had been a champion rock climber and ultra-marathoner. "Find anything interesting?" she asked. Jack nodded. "The course has patterns. It's designed to test specific abilities, but there are shortcuts if you know what to look for." "Shortcuts won't help if we can't breathe the air in Section 3, Kyle said. "I heard it's filled with methane gas." "We'll have brothers," Jack said. "The real challenge is the gravity shifts and the temperature extremes." A soft bell sounded, indicating lights out in 10 minutes. Around them, the other human cadets were getting into their bunks, some looking confident, others clearly nervous about tomorrow. "I'm going to try it," Jack said suddenly. "I'm going to volunteer to go first." Lisa raised her eyebrows. "Are you sure? Maybe we should watch some of the other species first, learn from them." Jack shook his head. "That's what they expect us to do. But I've been looking at this course, and it's not that different from the survival training I did in the Rockies. Different environment, same principles." "Your funeral," Kyle said with a small smile. "But if you pull it off, you'll be a legend." The next morning, all 20 human cadets stood at attention at the entrance to the gauntlet. They were joined by over 100 alien cadets of various species. Some had multiple limbs, others hovered above the ground instead of standing. A few appeared to be made of living stone or metal. Drill Sergeant Scathar paced in front of them, his scales glittering under the purple-tinged sunlight. "The gauntlet tests everything," he growled. "Strength, speed, endurance, adaptability, problem-solving under extreme stress. It has broken the finest warriors from worlds you humans have never heard of." He gestured to a large holographic board that displayed the course record times. "The average completion time is 30 hours, Scathar continued. "Elite cadets finish in 12 to 15 hours. The all-time record is 8 hours and 3 minutes, set by Cadet Verkash of the Draconian Empire." A tall, winged alien nearby nodded slightly, accepting the recognition. "Any species that can complete it in under 10 hours gets special privileges for the rest of the training cycle," Scathar added with a sound like a chuckle. "Not that it happens often." He looked at the human cadets with all 4 of his yellow eyes. "Who volunteers to embarrass themselves first?" The alien cadets laughed, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and rumbles. Jack stepped forward. "I'll go first, sir," he said. The laughter grew louder. Even Scathar seemed amused, his tail swishing back and forth rapidly. "The soft one has courage," he said, "or stupidity. Hard to tell with new species." Jack kept his face neutral, though he could feel Lisa and Kyle's concerned looks from behind him. "Report to Prep Station 1, Scathar ordered. "You'll be given standard gear and 10 minutes to prepare." At the prep station, a 6-armed technician fitted Jack with a monitoring suit that would track his vitals and position. The alien kept muttering something that Jack's translator couldn't catch. "Is there a problem?" Jack asked. No, the technician said. "Just adjusting parameters for human physiology." Your species is not in our main database yet. Jack was offered various pieces of equipment: climbing assists, oxygen boosters, thermal regulators. He took only the essentials: a water filter, a basic breather, and thin gloves. "That's all you want?" the technician asked, surprised. "That's all I need," Jack replied. When Jack returned to the starting line, Skithor looked at his minimal gear with all four eyes narrowed. "You understand there are acid pools in Section 5?" the drill sergeant asked. "And gravity wells in Section 7. Jack nodded. "I understand the course, sir." Skithor made that rumbling laugh again. "Very well. The timer begins when you cross the starting line. Your goal is survival. Completion would be unexpected." Jack took a deep breath, looked back once at his fellow human cadets, and stepped forward to the starting line. Jack stood at the entrance of the gauntlet, a massive doorway carved into what looked like black stone. Above it, a holographic timer hovered, currently showing all zeros. Around him, the alien cadets had gathered to watch, many making betting gestures with their various appendages. "Begin when ready, human," Skithor said, moving to a control panel. "I will monitor your progress from here." Jack closed his eyes for just a moment, remembering his training back on Earth. He had grown up in a small town near the Rocky Mountains. His father, a search and rescue worker, had taught him from age 6 how to navigate the harshest wilderness. By 16, Jack could survive a blizzard with just a knife and his wits. At 20, he had broken records in ultramarathons across Death Valley and the Arctic Circle. He opened his eyes and ran. The moment Jack crossed the threshold, the timer started counting. The first section was a variable gravity chamber filled with jagged crystal formations that reached from floor to ceiling. Jack felt his body suddenly weigh 3 times normal as he entered. "Most cadets crawl through this section." Skithor's voice came through Jack's earpiece. "The gravity increases as you progress." But Jack didn't crawl. Instead, he studied the crystal formations quickly and spotted a pattern. They weren't random. They formed a kind of natural ladder system, if you knew how to see it. He began to climb, using techniques he had learned on the sheer cliffs of El Capitan back on Earth. In the monitoring room, alien cadets watched the screens with surprise. "What is he doing?" asked a hovering blue alien with multiple eyes. "The gravity will crush him if he climbs higher." Skithor leaned closer to the screen. "He's found the pattern," he said, his voice betraying a hint of surprise. "But the gravity at that height is 5 times standard. His bones should snap." On the screen, Jack continued to climb rapidly, swinging from crystal to crystal. What the aliens didn't understand was that Jack wasn't fighting the gravity. He was using it. Each heavy swing gave him momentum for the next move. It was like climbing in a strong current. If you fought it directly, you would tire quickly. But if you used its force to your advantage, you could move much faster. Jack reached the end of the crystal chamber in just 6 minutes. The previous fastest time for that section had been 35 minutes. Section 1 complete, the automated system announced. Time: 6 minutes, 12 seconds. A murmur went through the crowd of watching aliens. Skithor's scales shifted colors slightly, a sign of confusion in his species. Jack barely paused as he entered the second section, the Desert of Illusions. The air around him shimmered, and suddenly he was surrounded by what appeared to be an endless desert under a burning sun. The sand beneath his feet felt real, and the heat pressed against his skin. Most cadets experienced hallucinations in this section, visions designed to break their resolve and make them question reality. But Jack had an unexpected advantage. The alien technology was designed to target neural pathways common to most sentient species in the Federation. Human brains were just different enough that the illusions didn't fully take hold. Jack saw the mirages forming. Oases that weren't there, paths that disappeared when approached. But he had hiked through Death Valley in summer. He knew desert survival. The real challenge wasn't the hallucinations, but the actual environmental conditions. The chamber was heated to 120 degrees Fahrenheit with only 10% humidity. He regulated his breathing, conserving moisture. He moved at a steady jog, not too fast to overheat, not too slow to waste time. His eyes focused not on the distance, which was an illusion, but on the small markers embedded in the sand, real physical objects that showed the true path. In the monitoring room, the aliens watched in disbelief. "He's ignoring the psychotropic effects," one of the instructors said. "That's not possible." "No," Scathar replied slowly. "He's not immune. Look at his brain patterns. He's experiencing them, but they're not affecting him the way they should." Lisa and Kyle exchanged glances as they watched their fellow human racing through the desert. "He's doing it," Lisa whispered. "He's actually doing it." The timer for Section 2 stopped as Jack reached the far end. 14 minutes, 30 seconds. The previous record was over an hour. "This is impossible," Scathar muttered. For the first time in his 20-year career as drill sergeant, he felt something new. Doubt. Jack entered the third section of the gauntlet, breathing steadily. Sweat coated his skin, but he wasn't tired yet. This new area was a massive chamber filled with different gas zones, some visible as colored mists, others completely clear but deadly. "Atmospheric challenge." Sithar's voice crackled in his ear. "Most cadets take 2 hours here. Your breather will not work in all zones." Jack slipped the breathing mask over his face. The device would filter some gases, but not all. According to the briefing data, this section contained pockets of methane, ammonia, and other gases that could kill within seconds. In the observation room, the crowd of alien cadets had grown larger. Word had spread quickly about the humans' unexpected performance. Even instructors from other training areas had come to watch. "He will fail here," said a tall, insect-like alien cadet. "My species can naturally process 12 different atmospheric compounds. Humans can only breathe oxygen." Scathar said nothing, his yellow eyes fixed on the monitor. He had pulled up data on human physiology and was reading it with increasing interest. Jack began to move through the chamber carefully. Unlike the previous sections, speed wasn't the answer here. He had to rely on the environmental sensors on his wrist device, which beeped faster when approaching dangerous gas pockets. But halfway through, Jack noticed something others had missed. The gas zones weren't random. They followed air current patterns created by hidden vents in the walls. By studying the subtle movement of the visible colored zones, he could predict where the invisible deadly pockets would be. He began to move faster, following what appeared to be a natural path through the chaos. His route looked bizarre on the monitors, zigging when others would zag, sometimes doubling back briefly before shooting forward through what seemed like the densest gas clouds. "What is he doing?" one of the alien instructors asked. "That path goes through a lethal zone." "No," Scathar said slowly. "Look at the air current patterns. He's found the safe channel where the gases are least concentrated." Jack emerged from the atmospheric chamber in 22 minutes. The previous best time had been an hour and 15 minutes. "Section 3 complete," announced the automated system. The fourth section opened before him, the reflexive combat arena. Here, combat drones would emerge unpredictably from walls, floor, and ceiling. Each was programmed to test different reflexes and fighting styles. Most cadets approached this section with caution, taking time to assess each drone before engaging. Jack did the opposite. He burst into the arena at full sprint, seemingly reckless. The first drone shot up from the floor. A spinning, blade-covered sphere. Jack didn't slow down. Instead, he timed his steps and leaped directly over it, using its own upward momentum to gain extra height. 2 more drones emerged from the walls. Jack twisted in midair, his body contorting in ways that seemed impossible. He landed in a roll and kept moving. "He's not fighting them," Lisa said as she watched the monitor. "He's avoiding combat entirely." Kyle nodded. "The rules just say to get through the section, not to defeat the drones." In the arena, Jack was a blur of motion. His earth-honed reflexes, tested in avalanche fields and rock slides, served him perfectly. The drones were programmed with combat patterns for dozens of alien species, but human movements and decision-making were new to their systems. Jack took a few glancing hits, a cut on his arm, a burn on his shoulder, but never slowed down. He treated the drones like natural obstacles, the way he would avoid falling rocks or shifting ice. Scathar watched in silence, his tail completely still now, a sign of intense focus in his species. He had been skeptical when humans joined the Federation. Their technology was primitive, their history full of conflict. But watching Jack move through the course, he began to understand something important about humans. They were adaptable in ways other species weren't. They didn't excel at any one thing. They weren't the strongest, fastest, or most technically advanced. But they could assess, adjust, and overcome almost any challenge put before them. Jack finished the combat arena in just 17 minutes. Half the course completed, the system announced. Current time, 59 minutes, 42 seconds. The room fell completely silent. Jack had just beaten the half-course record by over 5 hours. And he wasn't even breathing hard. Jack paused at the entrance to the 5th section, taking quick sips from his water pouch. He checked the small cuts on his arm from the combat drones. Nothing serious. His heart rate was elevated but still within normal range. He felt good. The next section is the acid pools. Scathar's voice had lost its mocking tone. He now sounded purely professional. The liquid will dissolve standard issue boots in 30 seconds. Most cadets use the hover platforms to cross. Jack nodded, though he knew the drill sergeant couldn't see him. He studied the room ahead, a vast chamber filled with bubbling pools of greenish liquid. Steam rose from their surfaces, carrying a sharp smell that burned his nostrils even from a distance. Between the pools were narrow pathways, some only inches wide. Floating above were disc-shaped platforms that moved in seemingly random patterns. In the observation room, the crowd had grown even larger. Federation officials in formal uniforms had joined the cadets and instructors. News of the humans' performance was spreading through the entire academy. "He has to use the platforms now," said a crystalline alien whose body sparkled under the lights. "No biological being can touch that acid and survive." Scathar pulled up more data on humans, specifically on their foot structure. "Their feet are strange," he muttered, "arched with multiple points of contact." Jack surprised everyone again. Instead of waiting for a hover platform, he began to run along the narrow paths between the acid pools. His feet landed with precision, sometimes on surfaces barely wider than his boot. When paths ended, he jumped, using momentum to carry him to the next safe spot. "Impossible," someone whispered in the observation room. "The paths are too narrow for bipedal movement at that speed." But Jack moved with absolute confidence. Back on Earth, he had practiced slacklining, walking on thin ropes suspended high above the ground. He had crossed canyons on lines barely an inch wide. These paths, though surrounded by deadly acid, were solid and often wider than the lines he had trained on. When he did need to use the hover platforms, Jack didn't wait on them like other cadets did. He used them as moving jump points, landing just long enough to push off toward the next path or platform. "His balance is extraordinary," Scathar said, watching Jack leap from a platform to a tiny outcropping near the exit. "What kind of evolutionary pressure creates that kind of proprioception?" "Earth has varied terrain with many natural hazards," one of the scientists replied, consulting a database. "Humans evolved as persistent hunters who needed to cross difficult ground while tracking prey." Jack completed the acid pool section in just 11 minutes. The previous record was 42 minutes. Without pausing, he entered the 6th section, the crushing pressure corridor. This long, narrow hallway was divided into segments, each with increasing pressure. Most cadets had to rest between segments, letting their bodies adjust to the strain. Jack felt the pressure hit him like a physical wall as he entered. His ears popped painfully, and his lungs had to work harder to expand. But instead of slowing down, He used a technique he had learned while freediving in deep ocean trenches. He controlled his breathing in a specific pattern: 2 short breaths, 1 long exhale. This helped his body process oxygen more efficiently under pressure. He kept his movements smooth and continuous, never fighting against the crushing force, but working with it. Halfway through the corridor, Jack stood before the entrance to the 7th section, taking deep breaths to stabilize his body after the pressure corridor. His muscles ached, but his mind remained clear and focused. The next challenge was the underwater labyrinth, a maze completely filled with liquid that wasn't quite water. It was thicker, with different oxygen content and strange currents. "The breathing apparatus is by the entrance," Skithar's voice said through the comm system. "Most aquatic species complete this section in 30 minutes. Others take up to 2 hours. Jack picked up the underwater breathing device. It looked like a small mask with tubes connecting to a tank. He put it on, adjusted the straps, and stepped into the liquid. The sensation was strange. The fluid was cool but not cold, thick like oil, but clear as glass. Jack felt resistance with every movement. He began to swim forward, entering the maze. In the observation room, a hushed conversation was taking place among the Federation officials. "Should we stop this?" asked one, a tall being with silvery skin. "He's breaking every record. It could destabilize the training protocols." "No," Skithar said firmly. "We're witnessing something important. A new understanding of human capabilities." On the monitors, Jack moved through the underwater maze with surprising efficiency. Most cadets struggled with the disorientation of 3-dimensional navigation in the thick liquid. But Jack had experience from cave diving on Earth, navigating flooded underground tunnels where a wrong turn meant death. He didn't fight the resistance of the liquid. Instead, he used less motion, making each movement count. Where other species relied on power, Jack used technique, keeping his body streamlined, using the currents to help propel them when possible. What the aliens didn't know was that humans had evolved from aquatic ancestors millions of years ago. Deep in human DNA was the memory of water. Jack's body naturally knew how to move efficiently in liquid environments. "His oxygen consumption is minimal," one of the scientists noted, pointing to the data readings. "Most species panic underwater and use too much air. He's completely calm." Jack navigated each turn of the maze methodically, never backtracking. When he encountered a particularly strong current that pushed against him, he dove deeper where the current was weaker. When facing a tight passage, he exhaled to make his chest smaller. He emerged from the underwater labyrinth, dripping wet, but breathing normally. Time elapsed. 14 minutes, 27 seconds, 7 sections completed. The automated system announced. Total time: 84 minutes, 49 seconds. The room was now packed with spectators. Even the Academy commander, a rarely seen official, had joined the crowd. Jack had broken the course record before even reaching the final section. The 8th and final challenge was the extreme temperature chamber, a straight corridor divided into 5 zones. It began with intense heat that would melt some metals, then shifted suddenly to cold that could freeze air into liquid, followed by more extreme variations. Most cadets required special protective gear to survive this section. Jack was offered a thermal regulation suit at the entrance. "You'll need this," said the automated system. "Temperature range exceeds survivability for carbon-based life forms." Jack considered the suit for a moment, then took only the gloves and thin face shield. The rest he left behind. Skithar's scales changed color in alarm. "Human. The temperatures will damage your cellular structure without protection." "I'll be fine," Jack replied, his voice calm as he prepared to enter. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans were one of the few species in the galaxy with exceptional thermoregulation. Earth's varied climates, from scorching deserts to frozen tundra, had created a species that could adapt to massive temperature shifts. Jack had once run ultramarathons in Death Valley at 130 degrees Fahrenheit and months later, completed Arctic survival training at 40 below zero. His body knew how to adjust. As he entered the first zone of blistering heat, Jack controlled his breathing, allowing his body to sweat efficiently to cool his core temperature. His skin turned red, but he kept moving at a steady pace. When he transitioned to the freezing zone, his body automatically began to shiver, a uniquely human mechanism that generated heat. Blood flow redirected to protect his vital organs. In the observation room, the medical monitors were beeping with warnings. His core temperature is fluctuating beyond safe parameters, a medical officer said with concern. But he's compensating somehow. Scathar watched in silence as Jack pushed through extreme temperature shifts that would kill most species without specialized equipment. The drill sergeant had been wrong about humans. They weren't soft. They weren't weak. They were the most adaptable species he had ever encountered. Jack pushed through the final temperature zone, his body trembling but his steps steady. The last segment was the most extreme, alternating patches of heat and cold so intense that the barrier between them was visible as a shimmering wall in the air. Most cadets moved slowly here, pausing to let their bodies or protective gear adjust between temperature shifts. Jack did something unexpected. He ran. By moving quickly, he minimized his exposure to each extreme zone. His body didn't have time to fully register the temperature before he was already in the next zone. It was painful, like being slapped with fire and then ice over and over. But it was faster than the careful approach others used. In the observation room, the crowd had fallen completely silent. The only sounds were the beeping of monitoring equipment and occasionally whispered comments of disbelief. 53 minutes total time, someone whispered. He's going to finish the entire course in under an hour. Impossible, another replied. The minimum calculated time for completion is 7 hours, even with perfect performance. Scathar had stopped watching the time. Instead, he focused on Jack's movements, his adaptations, his problem-solving approach. The drill sergeant had trained thousands of cadets from dozens of species. He had never seen anything like this human. Jack emerged from the temperature chamber, his skin red in some places and pale in others. Sweat and frost clung to him simultaneously. But he was moving well. No signs of serious injury or exhaustion. Section 8 completed. The automated system announced. Time: 13 minutes, 5 seconds. The final challenge stood before Jack, the gravity gauntlet. A series of platforms floated in empty space, each with different gravity settings. Some pulled upward, some sideways. Some had gravity that pulsed or shifted direction randomly. To reach the finish line, cadets had to jump from platform to platform, adjusting to the different gravitational forces each time. It was a test of adaptation and bodily control in its purest form. Jack didn't hesitate. He leaped onto the first platform, immediately feeling his weight triple. His knees bent, absorbing the impact. Before his muscles could tire, he pushed off toward the next platform. This one pulled sideways. Jack's body was yanked horizontally, but he had prepared for it, twisting in midair so he landed on his feet against what should have been a wall. He ran 3 steps along this vertical surface and jumped again. The third platform had almost no gravity. Jack floated upward when he landed. Most cadets struggled here, unable to control their movement without weight. But Jack had trained in zero-G simulators before coming to the academy. He used tiny adjustments of his arms and legs to direct his floating body toward the next jump point. In the observation room, Lisa and Kyle were jumping up and down with excitement. The other human cadets had joined them, cheering Jack on though he couldn't hear them. "He's going to do it," Kyle shouted. "He's actually going to do it." Scathar raised a hand for silence, his eyes never leaving the screen. The drill sergeant's scales had shifted to a deep blue color, indicating intense focus and respect in his species. Platform by platform, Jack navigated the chaotic gravity fields. When he reached a platform with pulsing gravity, he timed his jump perfectly with the strongest pulse, using it like a slingshot to propel himself forward. On the final platform, with the finish line just ahead, the gravity suddenly reversed. Many cadets were caught off guard by this last trick, often falling back and having to restart the section. Jack felt his body lift off the platform, but instead of fighting it, he used the upward force to flip himself over. As he rotated, he spotted the finish line below and adjusted his position. When the gravity shifted back to normal an instant later, he was perfectly aligned for the final drop. He landed in a roll and came up standing on the finish line platform. The timer stopped. Course complete, the system announced. Total time, 58 minutes, 43 seconds. Complete silence fell over the observation room. Hundreds of eyes, from dozens of species, stared at the timer in disbelief. Jack Murphy, human cadet, had just completed the gauntlet in less than 1 hour, beating the previous record by more than 7 hours. Sikthar stood perfectly still, his tail frozen in mid-sweep. For the first time in his long career, the drill sergeant was completely speechless. Jack stood at the finish line, breathing heavily but still standing. Sweat dripped from his face, and his uniform was torn in several places. Small burns and cuts marked his skin, but his eyes were clear and alert as the exit door slid open. Medical staff rushed forward, a mix of different alien species carrying scanning devices and treatment kits. They surrounded Jack, chattering in their native languages as their translators struggled to keep up. "Stand back," came a gruff voice. The medical team parted as Drill Sergeant Skithar approached. The massive reptilian alien stopped 3 feet from Jack, his 4 yellow eyes studying the human cadet with intense focus. For several long seconds, neither spoke. Then Skithar did something that shocked everyone present. He lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect that the drill sergeant rarely showed to anyone, let alone a cadet. 58 minutes, 43 seconds, Skithar said, his gravelly voice softer than usual. "You have broken every record in the history of this academy." Jack nodded, too tired for words. The medical team moved in again, scanning his body for injuries. "His core temperature is stabilizing," one reported. "Minor burns and lacerations. No serious damage." Another looked up from a scanner in surprise. "His muscles are already beginning to repair themselves. The recovery rate is unusual." In the observation room, the crowd had erupted into excited discussion. The academy commander, a tall being with luminescent skin, turned to the human instructors who had accompanied the cadets from Earth. "We severely underestimated your species," the commander said. "This changes our understanding of human potential." Outside the exit door, the other human cadets had gathered. As Jack emerged from the medical check, they rushed forward. Lisa and Kyle reached him first, supporting him as his tired legs finally began to wobble. "You did it," Lisa said, her eyes bright with pride. "You showed them all." Kyle couldn't stop grinning. 7 hours better than the record. 7 hours. They're calling it impossible. The human cadets formed a circle around Jack, patting his back and offering water. But their celebration was interrupted as Skithar stepped through the door, followed by the academy command staff. The gathered crowd fell silent. Skithar approached Jack again, this time carrying something in his scaled hands, a small medallion on a chain. "This token is given only to those who complete the gauntlet in under 10 hours, the drill sergeant said, his voice carrying to everyone present. "In the 63 years since this academy was founded, only 11 cadets have earned it." He held the medallion out to Jack, who took it with a slightly shaking hand. "You are the 12th, Skithar continued, "and the first to finish in under 1 hour, the first human to earn this honor." Jack looked at the medallion, then back at the drill sergeant. "Thank you, sir," he said simply. Zikthar's scales shifted color slightly. "I must apologize, Cadet Murphy. I made assumptions about your species based on incomplete data. Today, you have taught this old warrior an important lesson." The Academy commander stepped forward. "Cadet Murphy's performance will be analyzed in detail. There are techniques he used that could benefit all our training programs. Scathar nodded. The human approach was unexpected. They do not excel in any single area compared to specialized species, but their adaptability is remarkable. Later that evening, in the human barracks, Jack sat on his bunk, surrounded by his fellow cadets. The medallion hung around his neck, catching the light. His body was sore, but the medical team had treated his injuries, and he was already feeling better. So what happens now? Lisa asked. Jack looked around at his fellow humans, all watching him with new respect and excitement. Now we all train. What I did today, any of you could do it too. Humans aren't the strongest or fastest species out there, but we can adapt to almost anything. Kyle nodded. They've never seen anything like us before, and they're never going to forget us now, Jack added with a small smile. Outside the barracks, Scathar stood looking at a datapad. On it was a training schedule for the next day. He had made significant changes to it, adding new exercises based on what he had observed today. The drill sergeant looked toward the human barracks, his expression unreadable to most, but another of his species would have recognized the rare emotion in his eyes. Anticipation. Humans were not what he expected. They were something new in the galaxy, adaptable in ways other species couldn't imagine. And Scathar, despite his gruff exterior, loved nothing more than learning something new. Tomorrow's training would be very interesting indeed.